Hey guys, it's Izzy here, and this is the last video of 2020, and I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up today. Roses, their debut album, I think it's one of the best-selling albums of all time. Not 2020, but we can say December of 2020 wasn't a huge reading month for me, number of books wise, because this is a month where I didn't have to read any of the books that are on my selected TBR where I draw them out the hat. This was a month whereas I'm reading what I want to read, so a mood reading month. So I started with this shelf because I've been reading something from every shelf, and I read Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. So this is a huge book. Coming from George, you know it's going to be a really big book. So this is the history of the Targaryen family in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe, Game of Thrones, for those of you who are not familiar. So they are the family who ruled Westeros for a good 250 years, we'll say. And they had dragons and all of that. So this book, it's a duology, but only the first book is out right now, is telling the history of the Targaryen dynasty, starting with Aegon the Conqueror, I don't know where it's going to go to because the second book isn't out yet. But it starts with Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, Visenya and Rhaenys, and how they conquered Westeros and started this great dynasty that lasted for a very long time. So what did I rate this book? I gave it like a 4 out of 5. It's probably more of like a 4.5, but just by Goodreads standards, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed getting backstory in this universe and just learning more about the A Song of Ice and Fire universe and the Targaryen family. They may not be my favorite family, but getting to see from the noble royal family, that you can see how that affects the whole world, be it peasants or be it nobility. So like, as wars happen, a lot of wars might I say. But why I didn't give it a 5-star, this book really dragged in parts, especially during old King Jaehaerys and good Queen Alicent, because they are the longest time rulers of Westeros, and it just went so long. I was at the point of wanting to cry. I was so frustrated because I was reading 2 chapters a day. I gave myself 10 days to read the book, and I was just so frustrated by how much it was. I was just frustrated. That's it. But I will obviously be reading the second book that comes out in this duology because I read everything in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe because it is my favorite series. And yeah, a lot of people, this reads like a nonfiction, to let y'all know. A lot of people thought it was supposed to read like a novel, which I'm not sure why people thought that, because nowhere does it seem like it's going to be like that, but it reads like a nonfiction. So if you don't like nonfiction, you probably won't like this. But if you like Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, then you definitely need to pick it up. Now, can you read this without reading the rest of the series? Or should you read this first, since chronologically this would come first? You could, but I think you would get more out of it if you've read the A Song of Ice and Fire series. And I think it would be handy to have the World of Ice and Fire book by George R.R. Martin. That is just basically like an atlas and history of the world of Westeros and Essos and beyond. So I think that would be really handy to have reading this. And again, I think it would be really nice to have this background knowledge, which is actually the future compared to this book. But you could read this alone and then read the rest of the A Song of Ice and Fire series on my reread. I am reading this first, so that's what we're doing. So let's move into the second book. We went to this shelf. I have all my classics on this shelf. So the book that I picked up was A Christmas Carol and Other Writings by Charles Dickens. So this book, I felt like this was the only time of year that I could read this book. Again, I gave myself, I think, 5 days to read the 7 stories in here. So Charles Dickens, I do really like his writing style, but I have a hard time getting into his plots. But I think in each of his stories, novels, or short stories like this is, that it's important. I think what the message he's trying to get across is an important message. And in this one, there is obviously important messages as well. And I think this really gives us an in-depth look at what Christmas time, or just what in general life was like in Victorian times in England, and just how some of our traditions, how they started, and how this was again like 250 years ago, how we still have some of those same traditions, like having a Christmas tree or having a turkey for Christmas dinner, something like that. You really get to see how our traditions have evolved since then, or how they have stayed the same. But I don't think A Christmas Carol was the best story in this. I liked the one with the goblins, which was one of the first ones. And then I liked the one that it was about the Christmas tree. A Christmas tree, yeah. I liked that one. So Christmas Carol wasn't my favorite, but I do enjoy that story. I think it's a good story, and once again an important story to read. And overall, I think it's really important to read classics. I know a lot of people, school left a bad taste in their mouths of not wanting to pick up a 200-year-old book, but I do think it is worth it. Then we had the book that I am currently reading. Again, I told y'all it's not a big reading month, so this came from my bottom shelf. I wanted to read something short after reading a big heavy fantasy and then a classic, because classics are dense and, as I said, hard to get into. So I wanted to read something short, maybe something contemporary. So I chose one of my favorite books from middle school, and that is The Wish Stealers by Tracy Travis. This is a reread because, as I said, it was one of my favorites in middle school. I am, I think, 33% into it, which is chapter 17. So this tells the story of Griffin Pinshine. She's one of those people who is, I guess, superstitious. She always makes a wish on a shooting star, or a ladybug lands on her, the fountain, or the coins in the fountain. So she's always done all those kind of things. So one day they go to a antique store the day before school starts, and she's tricked into getting these cursed coins. They're Indian head pennies, I think is what they're called. She's cursed into getting them. So in this book, she is trying to break that curse, and it's just changed her life completely, having these coins come into her life. So again, this has been really fast and easy to read, as it is a middle grade, and one of my favorites from when I was that age, because she was the same age that I was when this book came out, like around 12, 13 years old. So that is what I'm reading right now, because I wanted to end the year with something sweet. So I will most likely be doing a wrap up for all of 2020, but that will be like in January. All the books that I read this year and the ratings I gave them, and this one I gave a like 3.75. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you in January of 2021 with a brand new video. Bye guys!